Joe and Mike in Vegas. Chapter 1. Dreaming of Ibiza. On a hot summer day on the outskirts of Los Angeles, a chubby, silent guy named Joe and his thin but incredibly talkative friend Mike were sitting in their old but faithful car. The car had seen better days, but that didn't stop the friends from being full of optimism. As usual, Mike was chattering nonstop, planning their upcoming trip to Vegas. "Joe, just imagine us strolling around Ibiza. The sun, the beaches, the girls." Mike enthusiastically waved his hands, creating vivid pictures in the air. Joe nodded, adding, "Sounds awesome." Every free moment, the friends spent discussing how they would relax in Ibiza. Mike was especially fascinated by the idea that thousands of beautiful girls awaited them there. "Joe, you realize that Ibiza is full of beauties? They're all just waiting for guys like us," Mike said enthusiastically. Joe just nodded, smiling. "Good plan," he said. "And none of them will refuse us if we ask them for sex." Mike continued, getting more and more lost in his dreams. "Interesting idea," Joe agreed. Chapter 2. Arrival in Vegas. The lights of Las Vegas flickered on the horizon, and the friends were thrilled. Mike and Joe, full of hopes and plans, drove into the city of sin. Vegas greeted them with bright neon lights, glittering casinos, and luxurious hotels stretching along the main street. Las Vegas Strip. The sky had already started to darken, and the city began to come alive in its nightly glory. "Wow, Joe, look at that. Isn't it beautiful?" Mike exclaimed excitedly, pointing at the huge, glowing sign of the Bellagio Casino. "Magnificent," Joe replied briefly, feeling the excitement run down his spine. Their car slowly moved along the street, passing by the Eiffel Tower at Paris, Las Vegas, the Venetian canals of the Venetian, and the stunning fountains of Bellagio. Each building was a work of art, sparkling in the night. "Joe, this is our chance. Here we'll hit the jackpot and go to Ibiza," Mike said confidently, inspired by the lights and sounds of the city. Joe, feeling the same rush of adrenaline, nodded. "We have to try." As they stepped out of the car and onto the sidewalk, they were surrounded by the multi-voiced hum of the crowd, people laughing, shouting, gambling, throwing money on tables, and enjoying life. The air was filled with the scents of expensive perfumes and cigarette smoke. For Mike and Joe, it was like stepping into another world, a world of luxury and gambling. "Almost like a dream," Joe said, looking at the numerous casinos and clubs around. "Yes, Joe, this is our world for the next few days. Get ready," Mike replied, full of determination. Chapter 3. The winning streak begins. They started small, playing blackjack and roulette. In the first hour, luck was on their side, and they won several $100s. "Look, Joe, we're almost halfway to our dream," Mike shouted excitedly, but Joe remained calm. "A good start," he said briefly. With each win, their excitement grew, but tension hung in the air. When they moved to the poker table, the atmosphere changed. The surrounding players, serious and focused, kept their eyes on the cards and bets. Mike was full of confidence, and Joe was concentrated. "This is our chance, Joe. We can double our money," Mike whispered, making a big bet. Joe nodded. "We have to be careful." The game lasted several hours, and each move was on the edge. The friends won and lost, but gradually their amount grew. They had accumulated about $5,000 when Mike suddenly proposed to bet all the money on one stake. "Come on, Joe. This is our chance. We'll double our money and be in Ibiza tomorrow," he urged. Joe felt his heart race. He knew it could be risky, but at the same time, he understood that this was their best chance. "Bold," he said briefly, agreeing. Mike placed all the money on red and roulette. The whole room held its breath, watching the wheel spin. With each rotation, the wheel slowed down, and the tension increased. Time seemed to stop. When the ball began to bounce on the numbers, anxiety filled the air. When the ball stopped, their dreams collapsed. The ball landed on black. "Damn, Joe, what have we done?" Mike panicked, grabbing his head. Joe just looked sadly at the empty chip. "Unlucky," he stated. Feeling their hopes for Ibiza crumbling, the friends stood in bewilderment, realizing that their dream of Ibiza now seemed even further away. They had lost everything they had and now had to look for other ways to their dream. Chapter 4. We need money. Penniless and with shattered dreams, Joe and Mike wandered the streets of Vegas. Passing by luxurious casinos and hotels, they felt their dream of Ibiza slipping further away. They were starting to lose hope when they accidentally wandered into the Excalibur Hotel. The hotel's lobby was filled with people, tourists, gamblers, and spectators crowded around three muscular dancers surrounded by young women, hotel guests. The dancers, showcasing their skills, drew the attention of everyone around. Next to Joe and Mike stood two elderly women, watching in admiration. "If we were younger, we'd be dancing with these stallions," one of them said, laughing. "But now they don't even look at us," the other added with a slight sadness in her voice. Hearing this, Mike had a brilliant idea. "Joe, what if we also dance for money?" he excitedly proposed. Joe looked at him skeptically. "Are you serious?" he asked, feeling a bit ridiculous. "Yes, we can try. What do we have to lose? This is our chance," Mike insisted, confidently looking at his friend. Joe, though doubtful, agreed. "All right, let's try," he said briefly. Chapter 5. Take off your shirt. Deciding to take action, they headed to another casino. Taking off their shirts, they began to advertise themselves, trying to attract the attention of passing women. Mike tried to look confident, waving his hands and loudly announcing his dancing skills. Joe stood nearby, feeling increasingly awkward. "Come on, ladies. We're here to entertain you," Mike shouted, trying to get attention. Joe, though embarrassed, supported him, nodding and smiling. They stood there for almost 2 hours, but no one paid them any attention. Passing tourists and locals looked at them with curiosity, but quickly moved on. "This isn't working," Joe admitted, realizing their plan was failing. Mike, though reluctantly, agreed. "Yes, this was a stupid idea," he said, sighing disappointedly. As they were about to leave, an old lady approached them. She was short, with gray hair and a sly smile on her face. "Boys, what are you doing here without a job?" she asked, looking them over appraisingly. Chapter 7. Naughty Old Lady. The old lady introduced herself as Ethel and carefully examined Joe and Mike. "I'll pay you each 100, but be aware, I like rough dances," she loudly declared, laughing. The friends, not believing their luck, agreed. "Deal," Joe said, feeling a slight excitement. They headed to her hotel room, anticipating that this could be their chance to earn money for the trip to Ibiza. Ethel turned out to be a very authoritative and demanding lady, but the friends hoped they could handle it. "Confidence is key," Joe said, looking at his reflection in the mirror, trying to suppress his embarrassment and anxiety. Mike was full of enthusiasm and convinced that everything would go smoothly. "Don't worry, Joe, it'll be great," he assured. Chapter 8. The First Performance. In the hotel room, Ethel sat in an armchair, sipping whiskey and watching as Joe and Mike began their performance. Mike tried to set the mood, chattering nonstop and making bold moves. Joe silently approached Ethel and started dancing on her lap. "Come on, boys, show me what you've got." Ethel laughed loudly, dominating the situation. Joe and Mike tried to keep their composure despite the awkwardness and embarrassment. Ethel laughed louder as Joe accidentally stepped on Mike's foot. "Oops, sorry," Joe mumbled, trying to continue the dance. Mike, blushing, tried to ignore the pain. "Harder, boys, harder," Ethel shouted, enjoying every moment. Joe and Mike, feeling increasingly awkward, tried to please her. Their movements became more clumsy, and the comicality of the situation reached its peak. Chapter 9. The Deadly Dance. At the moment when Joe sat on Ethel's lap, she choked and fell unconscious. "What the?" Joe said, stunned by what was happening. Mike rushed to the old lady, trying to understand what had happened. "Ethel, are you okay?" Mike shouted, but there was no answer. Joe, realizing the seriousness of the situation, began to panic. "Oh, God, Mike, what have we done?" he exclaimed, desperately looking at his friend. "We need to get out of here and fast," Mike commanded, understanding that they were in big trouble. Joe, with trembling hands, tried to pull up his pants, but at that moment, the room door burst open. Joe, hearing the noise, quickly hid behind a curtain, trembling with fear. Mike followed his example, hiding behind another curtain. 2 men and a woman entered the room with a cake topped with candles that read 91. Discovering the grandmother's body, the family was horrified. They stood in complete shock, not knowing what to think. Joe felt his heart pounding. He realized they could be discovered at any moment. Joe accidentally stepped on the curtain's edge. The curtain rod came off the wall and fell right on Joe's head. He, along with the curtain rod, collapsed in front of the 3. Almost naked, he shocked them even more. Chapter 10, $2,000. The grandmother's grandchildren were bewildered. One of the grandchildren started shouting at Joe, but then, to prevent the situation from getting worse, Mike jumped out from behind the other curtain, just as half-naked as his friend. "Wait, don't touch him. This is not what you think. We're not criminals. Grandma hired us to dance for her," he quickly explained, waving his hands. The family, hearing this, initially didn't believe it, but then, seeing the comicality of the situation, started laughing. "Well, she always said she didn't want to die and leave us her inheritance," one of the grandchildren said, wiping away tears of laughter. As a thank you for the unexpected end to the party, they gave the friends $2,000. "Unexpected," Joe said, accepting the money with a slight smile. Mike, still stunned, couldn't believe their luck. "Well, it seems we got very lucky today," Mike added, looking around at the gathered family. The grandchildren nodded, smiling and waving goodbye to the friends. Chapter 11. Return to the casino. Happy and surprised by such generosity, Joe and Mike headed back to the casino. They decided to use their last money wisely and slowly started winning. "Now we won't make any mistakes," Mike said confidently. Joe just nodded briefly. "Everything will be different." They started with small bets, carefully increasing the amount. Each win added to their confidence, and the tension of the first hours of play gradually faded. "We'll make it," Joe said when the amount in their account reached $10,000. Mike smiled, understanding that their dream of Ibiza was becoming real again. Chapter 12. Triumph. By morning, they had managed to win $50,000. "Joe, we did it. Now we're in for the best vacation of our lives." The guys booked tickets and cashed out their chips, heading to the airport and flying to the island of Ibiza, where even more crazy adventures awaited them. The end. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you for your attention.